Have you ever felt like you're doing everything to heal, reading the books, changing your habits, trying to stay positive, but somehow your body still feels exhausted? Your mind still feels heavy, and deep down, you still don't feel safe inside yourself. Like you've mastered survival, but forgotten actually how to live. Here's what most people never realize. When your body has spent so many years adapting to stress, pressure, overgiving, people pleasing, emotional suppression, and self abandonment, healing can actually feel uncomfortable at first. Not because you're failing, but because your nervous system has normalized survival. So today we're talking about that part of healing that nobody prepares you for, the liminal space, that messy middle where the old version of you is dying, but the healed version hasn't fully arrived yet. And instead of rushing through it, what if this is actually where your life begins to reconnect? But before we dive into this episode, y'all already know what time it is. Vibe with me, y'all. Welcome to the Empowered Plates, Empowered Lives podcast. Y'all, welcome back to the Empire Plates, Empire Lives podcast. It's your healthy habits and lifestyle coach, Jovonnie, helping women who are tired of pushing through pelvic pain, burnout, inflammation, emotional exhaustion, and survival mode finally understand what their bodies are trying to tell them before they lose more years abandoning themselves to hold everything else together. And today's guest is someone whose journey through addiction, emotional pain, body disconnection, and deep self-inquiry transformed into a calling to help others reconnect to themselves through mind, body, healing. Welcome to the Good Vibes Studio, Devin.
Oh my gosh, I'm so happy to be on, Jovonnie. I love this energy. I'm here.
Let's get it. So you said something powerful before, Devin. You realized that you were just doing enough to get by. How many people do you think are functioning every day but are secretly disconnected from themselves?
Oh, I would say most people. It's just the way our body is designed. It's whatever we got handed. Our body just tries to survive the context we were given, and that's our default wiring. And honestly, no one really loves change, so it usually takes a shakeup to try to break that system.
And when you think about it, because you feel like everybody almost is doing it, most people are doing it. It's the hustle and bustle of culture, especially in American culture. And we clearly know that survival mode is very expensive and it's costing you something every single day to live like this. How does somebody even know that that's what their life is, especially if they've normalized what their life looks like and they're accustomed to seeing it one way? What are some ways that they even know that this is what's happening?
Well, a lot of my clients, the big trigger point is resentment or bitterness. They feel like they're doing the things right and they're getting salty that they're not getting what they want back. And it's usually the subtle cue that they think they're in a bargain with something and they're playing the part of doing something right, thinking they'll get something back. But that bargain was never made by everyone. That bargain never existed in society. We were just playing a role thinking we'd get something. And we might be getting something, but we're like feeling a little salty, a little resentful because it's not actually what we thought we were signing up for.
I like it because it really reminds us that no one ever told us that that's really exactly how life was supposed to happen, or that's what we were going to get out of it. And then we come up with, life's not fair, but whoever told you life was fair. And so like it's almost a little bit of a space of entitlement that people possibly get into, thinking that they were entitled to have life look, feel, and be one way versus what it actually turned out to be. And so I'm liking that you kind of brought us back to reality of this vibe of resentment and bitterness that typically is at a deep root inside of us that we never even considered was even there. And so I'm really glad that you did it, because it's almost like an introspection type of thing. What is making me bitter? What do I resent about life? And how is that holding me back? And so I'm really glad that you actually said that. If y'all are dropping in on the conversation between me and Devin, drop the word bitterness in the comments if you're tuning in on YouTube and catching the live version right now, because bitterness is huge. And when you kind of bring up the bitterness and the resentment, Devin, with your your coaching clients and the people that you work through and you help them with breakthrough, what are some of those ways that you help them, one, validate the bitterness and the resentment, but two, start to initiate change and shifting from that space?
Oh, I think this is such a slow process. And I'm a somatics practitioner. So my big thing is feel it fully. And usually the people who want to change are the people who are going to struggle with this journey, because that resentment is usually buried under a moralistic argument that we're being good people, that we're helping people. And the bargain is that we do right by other people to get something back. And because it's moralistic, because it's dogmatic, it's really hard to get under that surface of like, actually, this is morally wrong. I deserve something better because I did right by someone. They should do right by me. It is a really devastating story to unpack, to feel that pain of like, actually, no matter what I do, I can't guarantee someone will be nice to me. I can't guarantee someone will consider me in their decisions or try to do right by me. That's not a bargain that exists in society generally. And it's really easy to moralize and just think if this was a just world, that this was the right world. And it's catastrophic, because to disrupt this, you have to disrupt the fantasy that people are going to inherently skew good, going to inherently do this. And that is a comforting fantasy. So it's very slow. I think a lot of the first thing people do is sit in that saltiness, sit in that bitterness, and validate that anger, because you need to sit in anger to look at desire, because that's the fuel to say like what I actually want. And then you start to fight for it. And you don't fight for it by making secret bargains. You fight for it by demanding it and moving towards it.
I like it. I like it. Feel it fully. I'm glad that you reminded us that it's a slow process. Y'all comment the word slow. I think we have definitely come into a space where society is always looking for quick fixes, immediate gratification. I need to receive results right now if I know it's going to work, or if it's something I even want to continue on. And even that, they can see the results after, let's say, 1, 2, 3 months. Let's go 90 days. And they will still revert to, well, should I keep doing it, or should I go back to, what it is that I'm accustomed to doing when life was comfortable, and when I was kind of stuck in my own way. And so I'm really glad that you reminded us to feel it fully, but most importantly, that it's a slow process, because healing is a process that everyone deserves and a journey that they should definitely embrace, but they should also be mindful that it doesn't always feel good. There are things you're going to have to sit with. There are areas and spaces where you don't want to necessarily rush through, but it's something you have to go through in order to get to that next vision of yourself and that next version of yourself. Because like you said, you get that desire, and then it's like, okay, I want it no matter what. Now that I know it's possible for me when it comes to this new way of living and the result and the outcome, most importantly, the transformation. And I'm glad that you reminded us this, because there's so many women that are performing wellness. There's so many women that are surviving motherhood and careers and pushing through pain every single day, feeling disconnected from joy, disconnected from their body. And I just know that there has to be some form of resentment or bitterness or victimhood of, why is my life like this? Why is my body feeling the way that it's feeling? Why can't I get relief? Why can't I get help? And I think it's really important to know that there's a process that you have to go through to, one, be aware of yourself, but two, then advocate for yourself to get the help that you need. But three, it's embracing different healing modalities and the different parts of the healing journey, because there's so many different ways people can heal just to feel better. And it's not to wipe away all symptoms, all, chronic dis-ease, but it's really to sit there and say, how do I want to do life now? And how do I see life in less pain, more energy, and more vitality, to really go from surviving to thriving? And I think that's a big thing, Devin. So I'm really grateful that you said, first, you got to be willing to feel it fully. Give yourself permission to take action if you truly want to change. And you said that one. You said if they truly want to change, they're going to have to sit in it fully. And so y'all also come with the word change, because not everybody wants change. They just want something different without actually having to do the work. Devin, why does healing feel so uncomfortable, especially for people who spent their whole lives adapting to stress or emotional pain?
It's because it's in some ways really unnatural. we might take the spiritual perspective that we're meant to grow and change, but our bodies are not. Like, our bodies are pattern machines. We have our whole mind body system designed to try to get control of the situation in a predictable way. And that requires we stay in predictable circumstances and with a predictable identity. And that is our entire strategy for control. So if you decide you want to transform, change, heal, whatever it is, that means you surrender every single strategy for control that you have. The world becomes unpredictable. And unpredictable might be in some ways better. People might be nicer to you. They might be situations that are more aligned, but unpredictable, your body feels is unsafe. Our body always wants control. It wants to have pattern recognition. And when we choose to disrupt that, we enter that liminal space you started talking about, which is, I don't know what's coming. I can't guarantee this outcome. This might be worse than I had before. I don't even know. And then panic ensues. You start to think, am I really this mad? Like, am I leaving something that was good enough to find something worse? Because you can't predict it anymore. You're going into the unknown, and our physical body is not meant for the unknown.
I'm just over here taking notes because I love that, because something that resonated when you talked about it, and you said the physical body is not one that wants to embrace the unknown. It wants predictability when it comes to identity, circumstances. It's all based on control. What about those people who have those personality traits that are all about control and wanting to maintain control? What does it look like for them to have to go through this journey to understand that spiritually I'm meant to grow and change? And the things that I've been experiencing, the cycles, the patterns of being in control, how I've shown up, how I push through, I'm not feeling that, Devin. I don't want to lose that control. This just, you said it feels unnatural, but it's natural to me. How do I make that shift? What are 3 things that you would say to the control person listening to this podcast right now that says, now what, Devin? You said I need to do what to you?
Oh, I will caveat this beginning. I think everyone is a control person. Like, I'm one of those people who, my control strategy is being the most chaotic in the room. But if someone shows up more chaotic than me, all of a sudden I realize I'm controlling because my chaos strategy is failing. It's uncomfortable. We want our control strategies. One thing I will say is, remember the why. When we start to change, it's because we were disrupted and we wanted something better. And it's really easy to lose sight of that when it gets uncomfortable. Write it, put it on a wall. Bring yourself back to it. The second thing I'll say is community. This is like the most life hacky thing, right? Sangha. It's just, if you get yourself into the population of the habits and the life that you want to move towards, they will keep pushing you there. And the third is, like, as awful as it is, try to have the dual consciousness to remember that your suffering is your greatest spiritual lesson. Because at some points you will be knee deep in just self-wallowing, self-pity, and it's kind of necessary, but it's in those deepest moments of suffering that people reach greater depths to themselves. They start to surrender larger parts of their ego, that they start to surrender control in deeper ways, and they start to find purpose in life. So if you can keep the second consciousness, because you have to suffer to change, that some part of your brain thinks the suffering is what changes me, it's not what destroys me, it gives a little bit of momentum to keep going through it.
I really appreciate that, Devin. So 1, remember the why that got you started on your journey of wanting to change, and find a place to put it there so you can keep recalling the why, seeing the why, understanding the why, so you embody all of the things that the why is calling you to do. Second is community. And that's so important because you need belonging. You need to feel a space of connectedness. You need accountability. You need to know change is something that you want to see. And when you start seeing other people get results and transform and live and get healthier and be more vibrant, you don't have to do it their way, but the fact that you know that it's possible and you're around these people who are okay with change, it starts to really become something that you embody yourself. And then 3, your suffering is your greatest spiritual lesson, because suffering changes you. I think that's really important, Devin, because when you said that, it made me think about my own health journey. And so for me, it was debilitating pelvic pain where I lost a slight control of my car. On the right hand lane was an 18-wheeler approaching. So I had just enough strength to get back into my lane. And when I realized something wasn't right with my body, I had to go to the ER. It started this journey to stage 4 endometriosis, adenomyosis, polycystic ovary syndrome, and they found 2 small fibroids at the time of my surgery. And I knew nothing about any of those conditions or the state my body was in at that particular point in time. And so when it was time for me to start healing, because now I understand there's a lot of chaos happening on the inside of my body. Now that I'm aware of that, how am I going to change? What does life look like for me? And there were a lot of patterns that needed to get disrupted. I had to realize that I was a people pleaser since I was a child, needing the validation, wanting to make everyone happy. If not, I felt bad. I felt bad that I was letting other people down, not having boundaries, always having to say yes and showing up for so many other people without realizing, what do I need? What do I want? What's best for me first before having to show up with others. And then just the cycle of toxic relationships, just not necessarily understanding healthy relationships, one with myself, let alone with others. And that truly, is a place where there's a lot of disruption that needs to happen. And so I'm really glad that you talked about patterns that need to be disrupted, cycles that need to be disrupted, understanding that how you're living is something that you need to take account for and understand, because there's so much more power in that. But most importantly, understanding that pain, that debilitating pelvic pain that almost cost me my life, is what got us here today on this platform, the Empowered Plates, Empowered Lives podcast. That's the pain turning into something purposeful. That's me going on my journey, feeling better, getting regular cycles, having less period pain, being able to have that energy that sometimes exceeds middle or high school students being almost nearly 40. Like, that's a big thing that a lot of people are struggling with to find. And so it's important for anyone that's listening, whatever the pain may be, whether it be physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, let that pain, as you continue to go through that journey, find power in that pain and really make it purposeful, because it wasn't there to break you. It's there to make a higher, better version of who you truly are, because the world still needs that purpose out of you. And so that just might be your next mission. So what I want to do is let y'all know that this episode of the Empowered Plates, Empowered Lives podcast is brought to you by Forward Vibrations. I want you to take the show notes and I want you to go and take the Spot Your Triggers quiz. Go to forwardvibrations.me, take the Spot Your Triggers quiz, and really see where in your lifestyle, what patterns are you aligning with right now that is fueling your inflammation and your pelvic pain. Check the show notes, head over to forwardvibrations.me, take the Spot Your Triggers quiz, and get more insights and awareness about you. Now let's get back to the conversation. So Devin, we're talking about turning that purpose into something that aligns to not only a good spiritual lesson, but something that allows you to truly work and understand what's happening in your body, because healing definitely needs to feel safe. And if it doesn't, then you're going to continue to remain in survival mode, because that's what you've always learned first. So we definitely need to just say, give yourself grace and understand that this is what you're accustomed to doing and feeling and living like. And so it's going to take a lot of change, but it's going to take a lot of patience and grace as well. You work with the body, psychotherapy, yoga, energy work. What do you think the body is trying to say when symptoms keep showing up?
Well, it really depends on the symptoms, but I am a firm believer that symptoms are messages. And if you look at the work of like Dr. Gabor Mate, if you look at chronic illness, so often it aligns to repression. And if you do social emotional things like cranial sacral therapy, so often even in cancer, you find repression, you find anger, you find grief, you find sadness that's been buried over many, many years or decades. And it doesn't always feel intuitive exactly what's there. I don't have like a clear mapping. Some people look at things and they think ALS commonly maps to like high perfectionism with a good attitude that is a little insincere over decades. I don't feel that level of precision. I just think your body is goal-directed energy that has multiple selves. It's got that control-seeking, safety-seeking self, which is the physical body. And we have, call it a soul, call it higher consciousness, call it something, but something that has a sense of purpose, a sense of self that is fighting misalignment. And so if you push yourself too hard, if you extract too many resources from your body without nourishing it, it will start to shut down. It will tell you, slow down. If you don't rest, it will make you rest. And there's so many ways it can communicate. But if you pause and listen, there's always wisdom. And I think that's why my primary bodywork modality tends to be cranial sacral therapy. And one of the things I love about it is that you don't think you're healing the client. You think you are creating the environment at which they can listen to their inner healer, because there's always that guidance in them to start shifting things in the direction of ease.
I love it. Creating the environment for ease. I like it. I agree with you when it comes to symptoms as messages. I like that you also talked about those emotions, repression, anger, grief, sadness, and how they could really be sometimes at the root of how your body is responding to those emotions and that energetic energy. I also like that you talked about that your body is always seeking that control and safe. And so that sense of purpose is fighting misalignment. When you talk about someone knowing they're out of alignment, what does that look like? And then what does it look like to be in more alignment with yourself? Let's give them this compare and contrast version of what does life look like if I'm not in alignment? What does it look like when I am in alignment? Just so they can see, like, what's alignment, Devin? What do you mean by this?
I can't say I have like some spiritual definitive answer to this. I have my kind of principles of alignment and authenticity, which is not that life always is literally easy if you're aligned, because sometimes alignment is fighting systems. It's speaking truth to power. It is setting boundaries. And actually life can get really uncomfortable when you find your voice. But I do find that there's less resistance to behavior, less rumination after the fact when alignment and authenticity come. Where I find a lot of resentment, a lot of regret, a lot of rumination, it's when people abandoned what they really wanted to do, abandoned themselves to try to please other people, to try to control a circumstance. And usually it comes because they're not sure if that secret bargain is being met. They sacrifice themselves to try to get something. And the minute they don't get it, they're not certain they're going to get it, they fall into the rumination, they fall into the cycle. But I do see when people feel aligned, when they feel authentic, when they feel in their values, even when they hit consequences, even when life feels easy, the strength of alignment carries them through. When they have accountability and they think they made a mistake, they will stand by it, they will repair. If they face accountability and they don't think it's fair, but they stand by what they did, they move forward because they have conviction in what they did. They don't regret, they don't think they abandoned themselves. And that strength of character, I think, is where alignment really shines.
I really appreciate you breaking that down, because I like that you first said alignment doesn't necessarily mean that life is easy, because it's not necessarily about an easy life. It's about truly embracing the life that you deserve to live and you want to live and you aspire to have for yourself. And so that does come with, like we said, change. It does come with some resistance, but not as much resistance because it's something you said you want. And so you're not pushing back from the change, you're leaning more into it. And so I like that you talked about fighting systems, those systems that work against you, that work against the things that you want for yourself, want for your healing, want for your health, less resistance to behaviors that you no longer want to serve. And I know we kind of mentioned it before, just even thinking about like addiction and some of the things that you experienced in your own life, you know, in your own personal journey, and you had to break out of those things to get to the space that you are right now. We can definitely get into that one as well. But then also realizing that there's a strength of alignment that carries you through even during those challenges. And I like that you also talked about even when there's mistakes being made or shortcomings of some sort, like you still have that confidence in who you are because you know you're in that becoming. You're giving yourself that grace, that compassion. But you have no regrets because you embodied you through it all, and you're taking you through the decision process and the changes and all the things that are happening. And if you are in misalignment, you're more so feeling like you're living in regret. You have that secret bargaining, thinking that something else is going to be more fair to you than you are yourself. But I also love that you said abandoning themselves. And I think that there are so many women that are caught into being caregivers, providers, motherhood, all the different roles and identities that society has placed on them that they may not even have asked for, but because they were the person that were dependent on, don't even realize that they're abandoning themselves. Can we speak to those people briefly, Devin, before we get into your own personal journey? For those women that might be abandoning themselves and don't even realize it, what does that cycle look like of abandonment, self-abandonment?
I mean, it can be really hard to recognize if you've been in the pattern for a lifetime. And because of the indoctrination of misogyny and patriarchy and colonialism, it is ingrained pretty much from birth or even like epigenetically through your DNA to be of service. What I will say quite often when I encounter it in work, when I encounter it in myself, it comes in the story that you have to do right by people, that you have to be a good person, that you have to be of service. And it has a compulsive energy to trying to do right by other people. And where it usually like feels sticky is that there's certainty in what is right and what is wrong. People start to think, I know what's good for you. I can move you in that direction. And actually what it tends to be is trying to move everyone towards places of comfort, even if that means stripping them of accountability or consequences, removing real life from them. It is trying to emotionally monitor everyone around you to keep them from feeling the pain of real life or the pain of living with their behavior. I think this might be a meandering answer to you because I think it's really sticky. It's really hard to identify because it's usually buried under this thought that you're a good person. But I think when people start the work, the first thing they really start to grapple with is that underneath the behavior patterns of service, people often have no idea who they are beyond helping other people. What do you like? What do you want to eat if you're not cooking for other people? Really basic things. What is actually pleasurable to you? If the entire life cycle is an addiction pattern, that your value is what you give to other people, quite often people never got the moment to explore what is the value of life to them outside of that bargain.
Yeah, drop in the comments value of life. That is very important, Devin. Value of life, because, and I like the way you framed it because it wasn't even in a negative connotation. It's in service of others. And underneath that, you still don't necessarily know exactly who you are, what you enjoy, what you would like, what you desire, what life looks like for you because of either sacrifice or service to others or something or other entities that you kind of miss out on that part of life. And so I'm really glad that you talked about that and really hit on the value of life. I also like that you talked about the accountability of someone really understanding what that looks like when it comes to stripping what is right, what is wrong. And it's kind of like, well, is there a right or wrong? Because what's right for me may seem just wrong for you, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's my world, my reality versus yours. And so I'm really glad that you talked about that certainty because again, it goes back to the abandonment. And when you abandon yourself, do you know what your morals, your values are? Do you know what it is that you want to live by, your code? And is the service of you sacrificing you being able to truly know who you are? That was a powerful one. When you don't know who you are because you're so caught up in being for everyone else at the cost of not knowing who you are, what it is that you want. And then it goes right back, Devin, to what we talked about before, that regret. Because then once you stop being of service and you get to a place where now you don't know who you are, what you want, how to live on your terms, then you start placing that blame on everyone else that you chose to be of service to with why you are where you are right now in life. And I could definitely see how that truly goes to self-abandonment. And again, not in a bad way, because a lot of times people are doing it out of the kindness of their heart, but it's at the cost of them. The kindness of your heart to serve others, but at the cost of not being able to truly live life on your terms and be who it is that you were called to be. And I'm really glad that we talked about that, because that's powerful, very powerful. How do we stop rushing healing and actually learn how to exist in the uncomfortable middle?
We're always going to be imperfect with this, right? Because sometimes it's going to be so uncomfortable that we're going to be desperate to move past a current phase. And I think one thing I'll just say is, like, first, grace. You're not going to be perfect at breaking perfectionism and healing either. You're going to swing hard and then retreat and then do this. I will say, I think the biggest thing is giving yourself grace that, like, your body is doing its best to create an ecosystem of survival all the time. And that is going to look sticky or thorny. And sometimes something's going to crop up that doesn't really look like healing, but for some reason, your whole system is trying to create an adaptation to make the current moment tolerable. It's going to look for a new coping mechanism. It's going to look for a new distraction, a new numbing. And there's no end point at which we're like the perfectly destined person. We were talking before this about making radical changes to our life for rest. As people who've been on this journey for a really long time, like, did we reach a point in our journey where we need to disrupt it radically and make rest for ourselves? Because there's no end point. Because it's continuous, it's ongoing, and there's no hallmark of maturity or something like that. We're just always trying to figure out how we can better resource ourselves to say yes to the things we want to say yes to and no to the things we want to say no to. And we're going to do that so imperfectly. And when we start to do it imperfectly, we can just bring ourselves more kindness. I'm like, well, darn, like, you said no to something you want to say yes to. You said yes to something you want to say no to. Like, what would I need in my life to make the decision a little bit differently next time? Because clearly I wasn't resourced adequately today to make the decision that I would wish for myself.
I like the resource adequately. I love that. Because just because you don't have the resources today, the coping mechanisms, the strategies, the things to put in place to have more of a healing rhythm doesn't mean that you won't have those or you couldn't have those. It's just not what you possess today. So I really love the resource adequately, and it's possible to get there. Always a fan of giving yourself grace. And not beating yourself up, because your body is doing the best it can to survive. And your body is, just like you said earlier, communicating with you, telling you something's off. We need a little bit more investigation. We may need to do some things a little bit differently. How do we slow down and truly investigate what our life is looking like, what our health is looking like, what our health habits, our patterns are looking like, what is life really looking at? And I think if we slow down enough and did our due diligence, gave ourselves permission to change, to heal, and be accepting of what that looks like for us in the raw and in the authentic, there's so much power there for someone to feel better, to live better, and most importantly, love themselves on a whole nother level. And that's what it all boils down to, is when you start making better decisions, different decisions, ways to live differently, it all communicates back to yourself as love and care. And so I think that's what we need to show ourselves a little bit more of. But I really resonated with the saying yes to the things you want to say yes to and no to the things you want to say no to, because there's power in those things. And the first person that needs to be relieved of any type of pressure is you, before you start thinking about what you don't want to be pressure for someone else. Like, you have to take care of you. And if you don't take care of you, there's only but so much of you that's going to be able to provide service to other people. And so I feel like that's really important. I feel like a lot of women believe healing should feel empowering every day, but sometimes healing feels like the grief, feels like identity loss, feels lonely, feels uncertain, feels like you're letting people down. but the middle is where most people typically want to give up on themselves, and that's just the place where they're breaking in to a close breakthrough. And I think if anyone's listening right now and you feel like you're in that place, keep going unapologetically to make things happen. Devin, what does reconnecting to yourself actually look like for someone who spent years abandoning themselves to take care of everyone else, be of service? What does that reconnecting to yourself actually look like?
Okay, this is like me coming from early childhood education. I always go back to High Scope's like pre-K curriculum where they have the plan, do, review for children, where they sit down at a table and they say what they're gonna do in the playroom, and then they go play, and then they come back and they tell the teacher how it was. Like plan, do, review, like the greatest way of learning something. And I think this is the way I think about reconnecting to yourself. Make a decision to try something you think you might enjoy. Go do it. And then ask yourself afterwards, did I enjoy that? And slowly, little by little, sometimes they're really small things like, oh, maybe I am a person who might like tiramisu. I've never had it. I'm going to go eat tiramisu. Did I like that? Sometimes the answer is no. And you're like, oh, this is not a body that likes that. Sometimes it's big. You're like, I'm going to go backpack in Vietnam for 4 weeks and see if I like hostels. And then every day you're checking in like, did I like that? Actually, no, I didn't like the hostel. I'm going to go to a guest house today. Did I like the guest house? Yeah, that mountain view was gorgeous. And the plan, do, review with yourself over and over and over again is the way you like gain the muscle in your body of like, this was pleasurable. This was not pleasurable. I just want to try something. And it's okay that it's experimental. It doesn't have to be right. And you try the little experiments, and then you think when the big experiment comes of like, do I want to go back to school and change careers? You're more willing to bet on yourself, even knowing the answer at the end of that review might be, actually, this wasn't quite right. I'm going to try again. Because you're still learning about yourself, still reconnecting, and even learning what you don't like or it's not quite a right fit is still reconnecting to yourself.
I love it. Plan, do, review. Plan,
Hi.
do, review. Let's go. Plan, do, review. Let's get it, y'all. Put that in the comments. Plan, do, review. That is the way that we get in a habit of reconnecting with ourselves without feeling like we have to be perfect, because healing begins when you truly stop abandoning yourself to keep everything and everyone else going. But figuring out how to really reconnect with yourself with the plan, do, review just seems like a vibe. And it gives space for liking something, not liking something, and it lessens the fear of needing to be perfect or figuring out what other people are doing and trying to align your life, your journey, your path with theirs more than what you can do for you with the plan, do, review. All right, so I'm with it. How do we create space for joy during healing instead of treating healing like another full-time job? Oh, I gotta eat better, I gotta do this, I gotta move, I gotta do all these changes, and I gotta uproot my life right now if I want something different. Like, how do we realistically, Devin, create a space for joy during this healing journey?
I'm so glad you brought this up, because to me, joy is essential. And one of my great passions is like working this old Indian game called Leela. And in this harsha, which is the Sanskrit word for joy, is such an essential part of the spiritual journey, because it is the thing that lifts us out of the human experience, even briefly, to remember the great bliss of our higher consciousness. And no matter how dark our days are, bliss is still available. It's not happiness, which is like state dependent. Joy can come in our darkest days. So I will say you can foster joy. The research on it is if you practice gratitude, and not BS gratitude. Like when you actually are grateful for something, like it does not help anyone to write in their journal that they're grateful for a person they do not like. Like, or unless you're like, I'm grateful that like you have exposed the shadow of me that is growing. Maybe that's sincere, but like if you're in an abusive relationship, like grateful that for my husband, you're just not, that is actually really self-harming. But there's always something to be grateful for. Maybe it's the flower outside. Maybe it's the scent of your coffee. It can be small. It does not have to be things, but sincere, authentic practices of gratitude create the conditions for joy. Ritual creates the conditions for joy. That's why across like religious practices, you see song, you see dance, you see these kind of community effervescence activities, because ritual begets joy and community begets joy. So like going out to dance, going out to hear a concert, These are things that you can't manufacture the joy, but you can put yourself in the mindset, which is gratitude, and the circumstances, which is ritual and the right community, that joy can come into you. If you stay at home and you don't put yourself in the circumstances, joy is not likely to come. To some extent, you have to just try to put yourself in the right circumstances to be the channel for joy at the right moment. And it can fuel transformation for months. Like one moment of looking out at the sea on a good hike with that like breathtaking awe, that can fuel even the darkest of days.
And you said that, it made me think about the mountain views in Utah. And you say like just taking it all in, and just it's breathtaking. And it could truly just be gratitude for being in the moment, to being able to see just nature in its rawness that looks like a scene of beauty. I was just making it seem like, oh, this isn't real. They have this whole what do you call the backdrop? This is just a painted backdrop. There's no way I'm driving through this beauty of mountains and snow-capped mountains. I was like, this isn't true. How much did the community pay for these these backgrounds that are fake? Because it's just so beautiful and it's so in awe. But I'm really grateful that you reminded us that joy can come in our darkest days, and it's truly something that people can experience. And the practice of sincere gratitude, that's important, because like you said, anyone can create a gratitude journal. Anyone can say, I'm grateful for this, I'm grateful for that. But being truly sincere about it and understanding the why behind that gratitude and what that gratitude means to you is powerful within itself. And it definitely releases some other type of internal emotion happening in your body, that your body's now saying, oh, we're grateful for some things. This is a different emotion. This is feeling good. You're grateful for these experiences like this. That can really change someone's trajectory of how their day is going, how their life is going, but most importantly, how their body is responding to them in that moment. And that is powerful. And so I'm really glad that you reminded us that joy is part of healing, not just something that's earned afterward or is in alignment with happiness. If someone listening feels exhausted from carrying everyone else while silently struggling themselves, what do you want them to remember today, Devin?
My first instinct is to say, gosh, that's so normal. Like, there's nothing fundamentally broken about that. That in our modern society is such a smart adaptation to try to create safety and capitalism and patriarchy and colonialism. Like, you are not alone. Your body is trying to protect you. Great. Like, we can give it that. But if there is a piece of you that's ready to disrupt it, that says like, I need a piece of my life that is carved out for me, it's not all or nothing. You carve out 0.01% of your life for you, that small moment in the morning where you eat a biscotti or something on your porch, or like, it starts with one choice. And it's so easy to paralyze yourself thinking like, well, if I'm going to live for me, I have to like leave my family and my friends and move to a new city and get a new job, and I need to do all this. And then all of a sudden you're paralyzed. But that's not really how growth works. And if you did all those things, your body would not be able to handle it, because your body is built for your current life. And so it's always like, what is the one step towards self-respect, self-love, not abandoning for one moment? And you build a life out of those little decisions. All of a sudden, that 0.01, if you do it for 2 years, you have a whole chunk of your life that is for you. And then that is just one more thing to build from.
I love it. Live for me. And that's in efforts of self-respect, love, and not abandonment. And if you are struggling, that's normal. That's been normal, even though it shouldn't have never been normalized. And I really appreciate that. Devin, when we think about who you were before you were exposed to a slower pace of living, being more intentional with how you were navigating through life and healing, what did life look like before? And what did it take for you to get on this trajectory of living a more empowered life?
It felt so subconscious. Like it, it's hard to look back on anything at any point and have like a real first person perspective, because now I have a weird view of my past life. But I don't think I thought much about my behavior. I was very intellectual. I was a student. I was a professional, but I really was just caught in my routines. I was kind of a reactive person, and my body was creating a fragile ecosystem. Oh, you're repressing a lot of anger in your relationship. Do marathons. Like, and so my marathons like fueled the anger. And then you're like, oh, the work environment doesn't feel very fulfilling. Have 3 glasses of wine at the end of the night. You'll like disassociate from it. And so all of a sudden my life was just this like patchwork of strategies that I'd been handed by people. And I was running the engine on something that wasn't really enjoyable to me. And there were coping mechanisms and numbing devices everywhere. And if I had just looked at a societal standard, maybe my career and my house and my relationship looked really good on paper, but like I wasn't choosing any of it. I was taking scripts that were given to me and strategies for survival I had had since a child and just running the engine on them. And I think what disrupted me was suffering. It was just starting to like have things blow up here and there and just be like, I don't like this. And it was just the desire for change. And once I do think to some extent, once you get the desire for change, once you realize you're capable of it, you never lose it. And so I'm still in it now, right? Like, plan to review. A year and a half ago, I moved to New York City, wanted to see if it would work for me. I'm at the point of review where I'm like, actually, I don't think there's a world in which I can sustain this city. It doesn't naturally nourish me. It naturally like erodes at my current body's nervous system that needs more peace, more quiet, more space. Maybe in 3 years, I would decide to plan to review it again, and I find that my nervous system is in a different state, right? But 10 years ago, I wasn't thinking in this, like, did I like that? Did I make this choice consciously? Am I trying something? Am I reorienting? I was much more a person who was addicted to making things work. And I think as I got the taste for change, I started to realize most growth happens in the ability to abandon ship. When you're in a situation that doesn't want to change, that's unable and unwilling to meet your needs, change often happens in saying like, actually, I'm okay with this not working out. I'm not a failure for redirecting myself and going towards safer harbors. And we can tell the story of like the grass is always greener as being like a fantasy, but sometimes it's just true. Sometimes the land you're on, life you're in, is not watering you, it's not nourishing you, it does not have the soil for your seed, and the grass will be greener somewhere else. And you don't know where it is, but you got to fight to go to the right place for your seed, the right soil, the right water, the right people, the right sun, and eventually you figure it out.
I like that. Failure does not have anything to do with redirection. That's important, because so many people can feel like, well, this was supposed to work and now I'm going in a different direction, or I'm trying something differently. And that doesn't mean that you've actually failed. And so I'm really glad that you talked about that. And then you said growth. Growth is happening when you abandon ship, when something else takes part. Like, there's still a level of growth there. Like, there's no failure. There's always lessons learned and growth opportunities that can be happen to apply to it. And so I'm really grateful that you stated that as well. I like that you talked about your own personal journey, and that what your disruptor was suffering. And there's so many women, so many people in the world that are suffering in a lot of emotional experiences, mental experiences, financial experiences, physical experiences. And that suffering is something that they could utilize as a disruption to go and get desire to change, and give themselves the permission to heal, and to really identify how their health, their habits, and their healing are really looking, and what do they want to do to change that. And it all starts with permission, because survival mode was never the mode that we were created to always be in. It might have been something that you were born into, or what you've adapted to just to get you to the next day, to the next year. But at a point in time, you need to say, when do I want to get out of survival mode? And when do I want to start to figure out how I would love to see my life thrive, where I'm not just existing, but I'm truly living. I'm truly loving myself, respecting myself, and I'm being of service to me first, and I'm not abandoning myself. And I think that's what was really important, because it's so easy to, what'd you say, the patchwork of strategies that people tell you to do, or the easy coping mechanisms that you've adopted and adapted over the years and what you've seen and what has worked. But to truly have the adequate resources, to really have the life skills and the behaviors and the routines and the different alternatives that you can choose, instead of choosing the way you used to choose when you were stuck in survival mode, when you were in the pain, when you were inflamed, when you were fatigued, when you were tired. There's a time to give yourself choice and permission to heal. And I'm really grateful that your story gave purpose and gave power to that, Devin, to where now you're able to share that with other people. And it wasn't done in vain, because now you've been able to grow from all of that. So we're going to get into Vitality Sparks. You ready?
Let's do it.
Let's get in it. Rapid fire. Here we go. What's one sign someone's nervous system is asking for help that most people ignore?
Oh gosh, it should be more rapid. Shallow breathing. So if your sides of your neck are getting tight, it's probably shallow breathing. It's not normal. It means that you are uncomfortable where you are.
All right. What's a simple daily practice that helps people reconnect to themselves emotionally?
Oh, it doesn't matter what you're doing, but if you can give yourself a period of time where you're not multitasking and you're considering your present moment circumstances, be it having a cup of tea or journaling, that moment to yourself is key.
What's one mindset shift that immediately reduces self-abandonment?
My strategies have a purpose and they're protective. Remembering that what you're doing has a reason.
I like it. What's something people think is healing, but is actually another form of overperforming?
Coping strategies to deal with a life that is a bad fit. Things like doing yoga or doing breath work or exercising to cope with the fact that you are unhappy in your life.
Complete this sentence. Healing becomes possible when
you stop trying to change and you just allow yourself to be.
Stop changing and be allowing yourself to be. All right, Devin. So last two questions. Give some insights to the father figures, male role models, girl dads, partner spouses of women, young girls who are dealing with heavy period pain, pelvic pain, PCOS, fibroids, endometriosis, adenomyosis. How could men be more a part of this healing journey?
First, make space to hear the stories without quashing, invalidating, or suppressing them in any way. I think that is the biggest thing, allowing the space for that person, that woman in your life to be central and to be heard. I will say, from a Chinese medicine perspective, period pain, period flow, pelvis issues, often splenic and liver oriented, which are about, are you adequately nourished? Are you getting everything that you need? And is your anger being funneled correctly to life that you want? So asking that basic question of like, what nourishment do you need? What do you need support to go? What do you want in life? From a Chinese medicine perspective, helping a woman on those journeys will give the appropriate qi to help reduce that pain.
Thank you. If you could have a meal with any historical figure, who would it be and what would you all eat?
Oh my gosh. Oh gosh, I'm not even a history buff. Give me a second. This is hard on me.
It doesn't have to be historical. It could be just for you. Like, who would you want to eat with? And what would you all eat? It doesn't have to be like this major historical figure. Like it's historical to you.
Mm. You know, I'm gonna go personal, and my grandma was my closest person growing up. She died 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Oh my gosh, time is so wild. And I think I just have a different understanding of her now. She was this educator feminist in upstate New York who fought for wage equality long before I was born, got it, and was fired for it, and suffered with so much anger, so much resentment, all these issues that we're talking about, and wanted so deeply to be appreciated. And I think I was good at making her feel appreciated, but I don't know if I was good at making these parts of herself feel heard.
Mm.
And so I would love to have the opportunity to go back and be the version of myself that exists now with my grandma who needed to be heard 20 years ago. And I think we would eat. I'm now vegan, but I would go back. We used to go to a diner and have this grilled cheese sandwich once a week on Sundays, and I would eat that grilled cheese with her and let her tell me all of her anger, all of her resentment, and just let it on the table. And I would make as much space as I could.
I think that's beautiful, Devin. And now with the times being had, they might even have a vegan cheese option for that grilled cheese, so you could still have it your way and be in alignment with where you are today with it. And I absolutely love that you would choose your grandma. Let everybody know where they can find you and where they can connect with you.
Okay, I have a website. It's www.findyourmeaning.coach. If you scroll to the bottom, I have a newsletter. Easy way to stay in touch. I have an Instagram. It's devinscott.nyc. I just made it last year and I'm learning how to use it. So bear with me as I figure out how to do it. But it's also a good place to stay in touch.
I love it, y'all. It's your healthy habits and lifestyle coach, Jovonnie. If this conversation hits something in your spirit and you're realizing that your body may be carrying more than just stress, book your healing breakthrough session. Check the show notes for the link. Don't forget to go to forwardvibrations.me and take the Spot Your Triggers quiz. It's been another amazing episode of the Empire Place, Empire Lives podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the Wellness with Jovonnie channel. And if you listen on your favorite podcast distribution platform, go ahead and hit follow and leave a rating. Remember that healing was never meant to feel like punishment. Go give yourself permission to heal. Thanks for vibing with me, y'all.